Hi, and welcome to another episode of A Regenerative Future. My name is Chris Hovde, and in every episode, I invite inspiring guests who all have in common that they inspire us in moving beyond reducing the minuses and on to creating as many pluses as possible in the world. That's what A Regenerative Future is all about. And today's really inspiring guest is Gunvor Dyrdal. She's a clinical psychologist and associate professor in positive psychology and mindfulness. Can you even imagine? Look forward to dig deeper into that today, and it's definitely worth the ride. She also says that she wants to contribute to people living good lives, both at work and when we do other things. So welcome to the cast, Gunvor. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm really looked forward to our conversation today. So thank you.
Yes, and how did you end up being a professor in positive psychology and mindfulness? What took you to that path, and what was the inner drive and motivation to go that path?
Well, I think I've always been interested in people, looking into how are we becoming who we are? But instead of always looking at the bad side or what makes us depressed or anxious, I was always interested in that feeling when you're so excited that you just want to jump. It's like when I was looking into psychology, I was like, why don't we ever talk about these things? Like the happiness, the enthusiasm that we really feel. So I think that's what brought me to this.
Yeah. Did you have a bad period in your life and you needed hope, or what was the epiphany or turning point?
Well, I think I've always been reflecting about why are we the way we are? And I've had my own personal struggles. So, I mean, there was a lot of both texts and literature about depression and, the philosophers that were talking about the meaning of life. And so I always think I've asked these questions. I've been introspective about it, but also that other part, why don't we just kind of disregard everything that's really meaningful in life? And so I think that question of meaning has always, as long as I can remember, been something that I've been pondering about.
And don't we all long for meaning? I just wanted to make the listeners also get to know you a bit. So can you let us in on one of the struggles in life that you have met and how you kind of went through that?
Yeah, I think there's several.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. No, I think I've always kind of been searching for what to do and what's my path. But psychology, what motivates people, I think that's always been the bottom line. But I'm from a family of engineers, so I always had that in me as well. So been curious and asking questions, but kind of never felt that I really fit in. So I've been in Oslo and in Trondheim to study, and at one point I was going to Stavanger, but then ended up in Oslo instead, and then also moved to the US. So I kind of always searched to the people and to learn more. And also I have 4 kids, and I've been along with them since I was pregnant with the youngest one. So that's been a struggle. I mean, going through a divorce and going through breakups, that's also something that affects you.
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest struggles in life. And 4 kids. Wow.
Yeah.
What a power mom.
I mean, it's a cool bunch.
Yeah.
It's also, yeah, it takes a lot. I mean, there's a lot of meetings at school and birthday parties and things to kind of follow up, and 4 kids at 4 different schools with their activities. And at the same time, they bring up questions. They also let you kind of learn more about yourself. So I think, like you too, I mean, you probably have your teachers, and I think my kids also are my teachers.
Absolutely. Even my dog is a good teacher. Maybe that's why it's called Buddha, and it's something more to him than that. But yeah, really interesting. And isn't it strange that I feel like everybody I talk to say, in a sense, I never felt like I really fit in, or I couldn't be myself, and from your perspective, what's I like to say, wrong with the system that makes so many people try to look for different ways, don't feel like they fully fit in or can be themselves. Kind of from my example also, both being gay, but I don't think it's about the gayness that's made me not fit in. I love being gay all my life. It's more like the odd things of, as you say, not wanting to drink, being a vegan for a long period, trying out what people think is alternative, but which I see as the healthy only. And then you're strange if you're healthy. It's like, it's almost like the norm is to be sick, lazy, fat, and unwell. And if you go away from that, you're a bit strange. Why do you think so many people, and maybe from your perspective, why do you think you have felt that you don't fit in? What's the solution to that from a professor of psychology?
I mean, it's really good questions and really good reflections as well. I think that evolutionary, we need to fit in because to survive, we have to help each other. So from that perspective, it's natural that we have that tendency to evaluate, do I fit in? Do people like me? But at the same time, we can be so focused on those things instead of really asking ourselves, what's really important to me? And can I really speak up about it? Or do I have to be like a yay sayer, just go along with what everyone else does? So I think just being older and hopefully wiser as well, and asking that questions like, what's really important to me? And can I follow that? Or do I have to kind of live someone else's dream? So I think, I think, and also just for us as well to be aware of our own ways of judging others and see maybe, wouldn't it be really boring if everyone were the same? I mean, it also brings up this like smörgåsbord if we have different varieties, right? And at the same time, that can be scary for people too, because they don't agree with me. And if you bring in vegan or if you do something different, like, So I think it's part of our human, I don't know.
Yeah. And it's so easy to judge. I'm like the worst critic, both for on myself and I also kind of easily judge people. I'm not afraid to say that, but also trying to work with that. And in our leadership development programs, we talk a lot about where you meet friction or where you feel like people are, that's not a good person or there's something wrong. That's where they are different from you and they can complement you. So kind of in a team, we need those persons you don't almost feel that you like, but it's not about the like, they're just different from you and you can't relate totally. So I think that's a good perspective to meet it with more curiosity. And then we just had the mental health day. I think it's also quite interesting. We talk a lot about loneliness in today's society. I actually don't think loneliness is a problem. Why is loneliness a problem? Because people can't be with themselves and they feel that loneliness is what to call kind of pain. But when I started to go to India and sit for 10 days in silence and start to live like a monk, I became my best friend.
Yeah.
I'm such a fucking good company. So like, I'm not lonely anymore. I would rather be with myself than be with somebody else that's not a good company. So I think the cure to loneliness is not being more together. It's befriending yourself.
Yeah.
What's your perspectives on loneliness, mental health, and so?
I think this is like deep wisdom. And I think so many spend so much energy at trying to escape from themselves. I mean, you can just look at people at the bus. No one just sits there anymore and like looks out a window. They're in their screen. So every time that or moment that opens up, you kind of escape into something else. Definitely. So I think that's a really powerful, like, how can you be with yourself? And I think boredom is one of the kind of negative emotions that we try to escape from. But in boredom, that's where creativity, that's the kind of the birthplace of creativity. So if you're never bored, how can you create something new? Or how can you even get to know who you are? And I think so. I think those are really good perspectives. And
And I think it's cool. I heard a podcast the other day and it said that Einstein was sleeping 10 hours a day. He was kind of resting in between, did a lot of silence, and kind of as seen as one of the brilliant people in the world. So I totally kind of align with that. Also in the neuro perspective, where we teach our people and in leadership programs and development programs, if you're able to relax your brain and you look to neuroscience, you on average get 20 IQ points more that you access. So you actually become smarter and get access to larger parts of your brain, and also empathy and flexibility and creativity. So like, we believe pushing harder makes it better, but actually slowing down makes us better and perform better.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
just had a guest previous weeks, which were talking about and advocating for the 4-day work week. And I think that's also a cool thing when we can work less, but we actually have more output and better impact with less time. So like, smarter, not harder is actually a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you can't be on the go all the time. Your brain needs that time off, and your body too. So I think, and that's what we also all know, right? That we have these in the beginning. You can come up with more ideas, and you remember more if you have these. That's why they also have you take these short breaks.
Yeah.
So that you can kind of just digest a little bit and come back to whatever you were doing, right? So I think
Absolutely.
that's a good. But coming back to what you were said earlier too, like that judgment. I think also, like you said, when I'm also working with mindfulness, I think just also recognizing that judging is a way that our human brain works.
Mm,
You know, it's a basic, that's the kind of the instrument that we have to work with. It's
absolutely.
this constant judging, and not just I'm judging you. It's like, do I like this? Don't I like it? Is this warm? Is this cold?
Yeah.
Because that's what we need to kind of orient ourselves. So
Yeah.
it's not that we're trying to get rid of that. It's like we have to learn how to use it more efficiently,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's also part of, also in leadership training or at work, how can we recognize that this is a tendency that we all have? But instead of
Right.
having that run our lives and go with our judgments or our preconceptions, knowing that, oh, I might be wrong because I'm judging too harshly or I'm judging too quickly, instead
Yeah.
of being curious and say, what does this really mean?
Yeah.
And I think,
Absolutely.
can I just say one more thing? Because
Of
this is,
course,
I'm
you're
sorry.
sure to say a
Oh,
lot.
God.
Come on.
I think when I'm doing the mindfulness trainings too, both at the university, but also like the MBSR courses or in other groups too, what I tend to do is like see the practice and seeing also life as this laboratory. Because when you meet someone and you're like, no, this is wrong, or I don't like this, that's also an invitation to look inside and see what is really bothering me here, right? Because then you can see, well, this is not this is unfair. Okay, maybe fairness is a important value for you, and knowing that can enable you to make better decisions as well. But if you just
Absolutely.
act on those kind of knee jerk,
Yeah.
and then you miss that, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's interesting too.
Yeah. And I also see that mindfulness give you that 1 second advantage to actually choose your approach instead of being that in the reactive phase. I actually talk a lot with my psychologist these days on not trying to mend or fix, but actually just accept that we are humans with biases. We are humans that judge. We are humans that need to fit in. Like, I think if we're just accepting both who we are and what we're made of, would make, we always try to kind of be something that we're not.
Yes. Yeah.
And that creates a constant friction. But I
Yeah.
must ask,
Yep.
how were you able to take this woo-woo mindfulness thing into kind of one of the most prominent universities in Europe, and even into the faculty of medicine and health science?
Yeah, I mean, a great question. And I think we had a really good leader. Used to be Høgskolen i Gjøvik. So actually, I was recruited by a person or a professor colleague there that were able to kind of start the mindfulness programs. So they had this leader and saw that, well, the mindfulness practice is something that we need. So she allowed my colleagues to start developing the mindfulness program, and then I came in also with my PhD and that academic background. So we were able
Just
to
a casual
expand on that.
PhD. Yeah. Okay.
Happiness and well-being. And it was
Yeah.
like, I think also when I look back on it as a clinical psychologist as well, having searched for not just repairing what's wrong with us, but also kind of seeing what you were saying, right? With what are we really made of and what's really part of being human? And how can we manage that and be with it? And actually, how can we do more of what we love instead of always trying to do or trying to repair what we're not good at? So that's the whole school system and everything is based on doing more of what you're bad at so you can
Yeah.
at least come up to an efficient level
Yeah.
instead of like doing more of what you love. So I think part of that and coming into the Høgskolen i Gjøvik, and then we had this fusion between Høgskolen and NTNU, which also enabled us to continue the educational program. So we've had different programs and also did some research on it. And I think also our students coming in and asking, why aren't we taught this on our basic levels? For instance, doctors, medical doctors, psychologists, nurses.
Yeah,
That
why
are,
the hell
yeah,
are not doctors teach this?
yeah. And
Like,
that's,
do you have a good answer for that?
yes, I mean, part of the problem or the challenge within the educational system is that, for instance, for medical doctors, there are so many different modules and things they need to learn within those 6 years. So trying to fit in another module on, for instance, mindfulness is really, really hard because the programs are already full, basically.
Yeah,
So it's,
full with illnesses and death and all the crappy things in life. Good luck.
so
Yeah,
that's why, I mean, when we had students, they're like, this, I mean, it's like you said too, it's a basic skill. How can I
yeah,
be with myself?
yeah,
And coming back to the acceptance too, which is like a lot of people just don't really understand what that's all about. It's not about like passively just taking whatever you're given. It's like, okay, you broke your leg. You can wish for it to be different, but that won't help you. It's like accepting that this actually happened. So what can you do when that's a fact? And I think acceptance in that way can help us like free up a lot of the energy that we spend on wishing things were different, which kind of prevents us from actually handling our situation in a more productive or better way.
yeah. I like the saying, if you pray to God, make that be followed with an action. And to me,
Yeah.
acceptance is about that. Accept what is, but then take an action to kind of improve your situation.
Yeah,
And
that's a good
of
saying.
course, I'm interested when you are here, what can people do to improve their lives with the lens of psychology and mindfulness? Do you have any practical tips, tricks to the people out there to make
Yeah.
their lives amazing?
Yeah. I think first of all, I think like just being grateful. Start looking for what you really love in your life instead of always looking for things to improve. So that's a really
But
good.
it's so nice to look at the things that are broken and that's shitty and yeah.
Yeah, and that's great if there's a way to improve that, right? Otherwise, you're just gonna like wallow in that sorrow or, yeah, I think so. I think if you can do something about it, it's really good if you can fix it. But our problem from a psychologist standpoint is that we tend to use that fixation strategy
Yeah,
with our emotions as well. And our emotions can't be fixed. Our
that's
emotions
true.
need to be accepted. So if you're sad, allow yourself to be sad because the sadness will at some point turn into something else. But I think looking for things in your life that you love, telling people in your life that you appreciate them, trying to improve what you can improve, but also accepting that, okay, I weren't able to do this today. Instead of giving
Okay.
yourself a hard time, see that, well, I did my best.
And I think To me, it's also a bit, as you say, accept your emotions. To me, why is sadness worse or better emotion than happiness? To me, they are sisters and brothers, basically. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes really good when I do a really long, deep cry. Like I'm in the process of handing my mom over to a different place. And
Wow.
sometimes I feel like it's the most natural thing in life with death, and life and death is equally beautiful in a sense.
Yeah.
It's a transition. But then, of course, I also kind of have those moments where I really get sad. Then I put on a playlist like Cry Your Heart Out, it's called. And then just cry and cry and cry and cry. And it feels so good afterwards. And I connect more to my mother. I connect to the memories. It's kind of a part of a grieving process. I think it's important to take those moments as well.
Definitely. And I think what you're saying is so beautiful too, because our emotions are there for a reason, right? So in the sadness, it's also a function of having people come and comfort you. If you're sad, someone comes and like pats your back or gives you a hug, and that's also part of it, because we need that. So if we try to kind of shut out of negative emotions, and we just name them negative because we don't like them. But I mean, they're just emotions.
Yeah,
You don't have to label them either as positive or negative. They're just emotions.
I agree.
And they're here for a reason. So if you try to shut those out, what happens is you also shut down or turn down your positive emotions.
Yeah.
Because it's not possible to kind of single out, I don't want these emotions, but I want these emotions.
Only these, yeah.
Yeah, it's not possible. It doesn't work that way. So if you
Yeah. No wonder why we are depressed and have mental illnesses on the rise. I think kind of accepting the whole you is the only opportunity or kind of viable option.
And I think also, just for that as well, I think maybe also question what our thoughts about life is. Maybe we expect everything to be wonderful and we're just going to be happy and everything's going to go our way. That also kind of shuts down half of life, because life is hard sometimes. You get what you don't want and you don't get what you want sometimes too. And that can be hard and it can be disappointing, and it's part of life. And just talking about it and sharing, you know what, I applied for this job and I didn't even get an interview, right? That can be disappointing, but then you can talk to friends and you can laugh about it or you can cry about it. And then a shared sorrow is a half a sorrow. A shared joy is double joy, right? So it's part of that too.
That's true. I will be better at sharing, actually. I'm good at, I've always managed myself through my whole life, so I go and cry by myself. So I will take that tip and start to share a bit more or ask for support or help, actually.
Yeah, and
that's
tell me what
thing.
you experience. Yeah, when you do that, let me know what you find out.
For sure. This sounds like more like a therapy session than a podcast, but that's also nice. But if they're going to take the last element, if people want to kind of start to dig into silence and meditation and mindfulness, my first meeting was also with one of the courses that you said, MBSR, which is Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program, which actually the doctors at the clinic I was leading at that time, Baldy Clinic was holding and asked me to join. The last day was 5 hours of silence.
Yeah, that's the retreat in the middle. Yeah.
I was like, that's not possible. Like, I wanted to kind of sign off and not come and cancel, and I just made up all excuses. But I ended up going, and it's the most profound thing I've ever experienced in my life. And after that, I was like, I want to do 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. I want to live forever in silence. So how can people start to walk down that kind of wonderful, magical path of being with yourself, listening inwards, silence? Yeah.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is a really interesting thing, because being part of an MBSR course, even though you have that kind of retreat, which is a silent day, you're being led through the whole day. So I'm also doing MBSR courses, and our silent day is coming up in November. And I think that's the beauty of it too, that you can be with yourself. You don't have to kind of care about the other people, but you're being led. So you're not just sitting there in silence with everything that goes on. So I think it's a good way to start. And maybe also you don't have to do a full day. You can sign up for a course, or you can just do 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day. And just to experience it. But I think it's a weird thing when we do that too at our university. I think students are, what? We're going to have a full day of silence?
Yeah.
What is that going to be all about? But then, like you said too, I think they have this, wow, I've never given myself the gift of being silent for so long and just being with myself and kind of observing, what does this feel like? And can I be with, and that element too of being with others, but in silence. And it's kind of an invited silence. It's not, you can't look at anyone else or you have to do this. It's like not this strict. It's like this, see what happens. And that's what I, in my life and in my therapy and also in mindfulness, I think kind of inviting this as a laboratory, that you're the researcher that is examining your own life. What do I like? What do I don't like with this? Or what do I experience if I just let it be? If I don't scratch when it's scratching, what happens? Because
you get to know yourself on such a deep level. It's magical. I would, though, disagree with you on a bit. I think when we say teachers and kind of people say, you can just do 10 minutes a day, I actually believe you need to do 5 hours or more to really experience the insane, profound benefits of silence. I also started with 10 minutes, and I know it makes a difference scientifically, but it's almost like going to the gym and breathing on the bike and then go back home again. Yes, maybe you got a bit more happy, but like to really get a profound change that want to make you continue for, I would say, the rest of your life. In Vipassana, the beginner course is 10 days.
Yes, I know.
So it's quite, and you don't need any experience to take that course. So I think I actually advocate for larger slots in the beginning. Do 5 hours, do 3 days, do 10 days. Start with a big thing, because then you will really see how profound it is.
I really applaud that. And I think just offering more of these silent days as well, so that people can try it. That's one of the things I'm doing more these days. So, and I think you're really right, because it's totally different doing 10 minutes and 5 hours.
It's so different. And if you're going to start to get into a closing of today, and I could dig deep into this forever. Maybe we need to have another talk later on when you're on to different things. But if you're going to talk about a bit and look into the future, this podcast is all about what a regenerative future is all about. If you could wish for creating as many pluses as possible, or maybe you could even be the president of the world for one day, what would be the changes that you would make or encourage everybody to do so we could live happier, more thriving lives?
I think one of the things we started out talking about, also feeling not that we're not fitting in. So I think I would also encourage people to collaborate more and kind of go back to also this kind of closer knit communities, sharing more, being part of, being curious about other people, and seeing that 1 + 1 can actually equal 10 sometimes. You don't have to do everything yourself. So I
was expecting 3 there, but actually 10, that's a new one.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, when you sit and throw ideas back and forth, you can create something completely new, which can profoundly change things. And also just being, when I was sitting here with alone with kids and just having neighbors come by with fresh bread and homemade jam, it's like, that was so profound. It just gave me that sense of not being alone, even though I was alone in a difficult situation. So just looking out for other people and including them, and that can also create that change and kind of get away from that feeling lonely. So, because we have this, we want to add value and we want to be valued. And that's something I come back to often. How can we both add value, but also allow ourselves, because that's a part of it, to be valued?
That's nice. We need each other and lean on each other more. I almost feel that as a personal advice as well. It's so easy to, especially when you live the really kind of rough life, to kind of be a bit kind of self-reliant and self-dependent. But like, open yourself up and be vulnerable, and each other is a good tip. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah.
No,
Did
and
you
that's
want to
so
add a last thing?
difficult.
Yeah.
It's so difficult sometimes, right? Because we're so, like you said, so independent. So just with my boyfriend too, it's like he wants to contribute, and it's sometimes so difficult to kind of being helped.
Yeah.
So I think
So
that's also
even,
something we can work
yeah,
on.
yeah. We have a lot to work on. So create a community around yourself, or just get as many babies as you did, and then you have a pack around you. That's another alternative. Gunvor, it was a pleasure to have you. I'm so happy that you both bring mindfulness, meditation, positive psychology, both into the universities and the lives of many, many people. Thank you for contributing to a regenerative world for all of us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here, and I'm totally agree. We should have just continued this conversation for hours.
Yeah, let's see if we can do that another time. And
Thank you.
thank you then to all the listeners to the podcast A Regenerative Future, where we every week invite inspiring guests as Gunvor, who all contribute to as many pluses as possible, so we can all live better and more fulfilling lives. So until next time, wish you a regenerative week ahead. See you again, and good.